Welcome, everybody, to the Fantasy Golf Bag First Look podcast. This is a dual stream, so this will be a live stream viewed on twitch.tv/Redkacheek and also on our YouTube channel. You can go to youtube.com and then search Fantasy Golf Bag and find our channels there. Yeah, so this will be a live stream, so I'll be viewing the comments. I've been live for about 15 minutes, and I never hit live, so I was just talking to myself. I have a really good grasp on it. I think I gave out all the right plays. No, we didn't get too far down a rabbit hole, but we will talk through the overview of the golf course. So again, going to preview the Honda Classic, looking at PGA National, and then we'll use for Fantasy Golf Bag the Super Prox primarily, and then if we have time at the end, I'll just pull up the normal extended approach data that we have. But the Super Prox is a pretty good way for us to get a grasp on, especially, I mean, honestly, with the way the golf course is with 2 par 5s, obviously a lot of par 4s. Every week it's beneficial, but maybe even more so this week. So we'll look at that, and then I have it pulled up on Data Golf, and there's a gnat. And so we'll look through that. Anything I forgot that I mentioned in the beginning? Don't think so. Again, I'm Drew Matthews, also known as Redkacheek. I'm the main contributor here at fantasygolfbag.com. So I encourage you to check out the website, check out the data and the showdown tools every slate, Thursday night through Saturday night for round 2 through 4. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. I probably saved us about 10 minutes because I was in 15 minutes and probably wasn't very far. So this is probably very good progress. Unfortunately, I got the gnat. Look at that. Got him. Yeah, I try to do this every Monday, and then we have a Wednesday live stream as well. Final look, whatever you want to call it. Last week didn't work out. I had a sick kid, unfortunately, and just couldn't make it work. And then this week I'm sick, so I didn't want to miss 2 weeks in a row. So we're gonna bust through this thing, and I think we should get off to a good point. The main piece that's probably missing from this stream that we always hit on Wednesday, even if it's not even necessary. I think a few times we've looked at wind when it's 1 mile an hour, and we just talk through it really quickly and move on. But there should be some weather concern or weather impact this week, and we'll talk about that on Wednesday night's live stream. It's just I don't plan to waste any time. I'm talking about it now, and even if it doesn't change, we'll know more detail on the actual like timeframes of the weather impact on Wednesday going into Thursday and Friday. So, all right, let's go ahead and dive into it. So again, what I did in the first 15-minute segment that was not recorded, I just went ahead and went to the Super Prox data table. So if you click that, and then we'll go to extended approach later. So we'll hit Super Prox first. It'll load a little, and I'll hide myself for right now. Let's see. Okay. You can actually play with it in the Excel sheet that's embedded in here, but it's also easier. It's obviously also it's easier if you just download it to Excel, and then you can play with it in here. So we'll walk through this. There's a 5T tab down here at the bottom. Let me try to make the screen a little bit bigger. There we go. A 5T tab, which is the last 5 tournaments. 10T tab, which is the last 10 tournaments, basically through the fall swing. And then we have a course history, which is it's just the last 2 years. You could pull in more, but from a DFS perspective and like a golfer's skill level, the last 2 years is most relevant for me. I think course history goes back further than that in terms of like a person's comfortability on a golf course. But from a data standpoint, what we're looking at here specifically with proximity numbers and distance into these par 4s, the last 2 years is plenty far back to go, in my opinion. Any further back than that, there's probably some type of difference in technology for the player, or just the player's skill level has changed on those wedges or mid irons or long irons, what have you. So what I'm going to focus on, last 5 tournaments. And again, the last 2 years played at PGA National, using the course history there to map it with the EAP that we have. So we'll look through that. First thing we want to look at is the actual golf course and talk through that for a second. Probably the easiest way to go about it is every single week. First thing I'll look at is the yardage. Just get an idea if it's going to be a long golf course or a short golf course. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to play long. So for example, I don't know what is the yardage at RBC Heritage, 6880, something like that. 6996, perfect, right on the button. So it's 7,000 yards, driving distance of 280, and you can see the distances. This course is actually longer than a lot of the longer golf courses. So I don't know what Riviera played last week. We can actually pull it up, but if you can just, for those that are listening on the podcast, this is showing RBC Heritage is 7,000 yards, driving distance average of 278, and then the proximities are right at 20% for 150 to 175, 27% for 175 to 200. So 47% from 150 to 200. Pretty long for a golf course that is, notably short in today's time. I'm curious what like Arnold Palmer, if I can type Arnold Palmer Invitational is, or actually we just talked about the Genesis. So if we go back to the Genesis from last week, longer golf course, so 7,200 yards, a little bit longer, but not much, right? 150 to 200 yards. So 300 yards further almost, and right at 48%. So, 2% longer, from that bucket. So about the same, even though it's 300 yards further. So it just gives you an idea. So driving distance doesn't necessarily matter. The course yardage doesn't necessarily matter. We're going to try to focus on the proximities because that gives you a greater idea on how the golf course plays, how people attack the golf course. So it has a good mix. Still 20%, 125 to 150 on average. And again, the Super Prox sheet will tailor that to the actual players. Driving accuracy, green regulation rates, we look at every single week. This one's pretty standard. So when I look at this, again, it's 64% driving accuracy, 64% green regulation rate. When it's matched up like that, it's fairly tough off the tee. It's fairly tough into the greens. Essentially, it's not so much 1-to-1, but basically, if you hit the fairway, you have a really good shot at hitting the green. If you don't hit the fairway, you're probably not going to hit the green. It's basically a 1-to-1 ratio. Conversely, if it was like a really high driving accuracy rate, like 75%, and then a green regulation rate was 63%, like at Pebble, then that tells me the greens are really small. There's an even bigger emphasis on green regulation rate for the players coming into this week. Driving accuracy doesn't matter. And again, it's all one big package. You're looking at distance, you're looking at accuracy, and green regulation rate. That's the main pieces that I'm looking at for the golf course. The other thing that I look at is the scoring, which I had pulled up over here. And for the last couple events played at PGA National, the winning score, 12 under par last year, 6 under par in 2020. Sungjae Im won. Keith Mitchell finished at 9 under in 2019, and then -8, -12, -9, -6, -8. That's back through 2014. So it gives you an idea. It's not going to be an easy golf course. The wind makes it much more difficult, but expect, low, probably not even low teens, just 10 under par, low single digits at the best. The scoring this whole year, though, has been extremely, extremely low. So we'll see what actually plays out at the Honda. Again, like I said, it looks like there's going to be some wind impact, and maybe that brings it down to that 9 under par, 8 under par winning score. That'd be fantastic based off of the last couple of weeks that we watched. Just birdie bonanzas is ridiculous. Neiman kind of ran away with it last week, so it's not so much the whole field went nuts, but still, if you would have taken Neiman out and even Cameron Young out, Saturday's leaderboard would have looked really pretty cool going into Sunday, but it is what it is. So we should expect some lower scoring, some tighter leaderboards into the weekend. And with that, like I said, the Super Prox does all the work for you. This just gives you an idea. The golf course isn't long. We really don't need to do anything fancy with waiting off the tee. I will say, though, if you do wait approach, which we're going to look at, you should wait off the tee from a historical standpoint, or at least tee to green. Maybe tee to green's even better this week. The reason why is, and I kind of dropped this into our Discord, strokes gained approach isn't a metric against players. It's a metric against the baseline. So like we see in Showdown, and which is what the Showdown sheets are really helpful with, avoiding those pitfalls. You know, if Bryson DeChambeau, which is probably a terrible example at the moment because he doesn't exist in the world of golf, if he gains a stroke on approach, that's not the same as we'll just use Brendan Todd as the example from a couple weeks ago. If Brendan Todd gains a stroke on approach versus Bryson DeChambeau, it's not the same. They're both gaining a stroke on approach, but it's against the baseline, not against each other. If they're playing against each other, the only difference in those two players will be off the tee or tee to green at some point. I mean, tee to green kind of will sum it up at that point, but off the tee most likely. So what I mean by that is Bryson DeChambeau has 120 yards into a hole versus 140 or 150 from Brendan Todd. If they both gain a stroke on approach, Bryson DeChambeau is playing better than Brendan Todd. He's going to have more birdie opportunities. He's going to have better looks at it. So again, strokes gain approach is fine, but you want to weigh in other metrics because, I mean, the shortest hitter, if this was Corey Pavin's era, he's probably gaining strokes on approach, and you go play him and you're wondering why he doesn't play very well at a 7,400-yard golf course because he can't gain any strokes off the tee because he hits at 240. I don't know, 260, whatever he hit it back then. Not very far. So definitely consider using other stats when you use approach. You should already, but just to reiterate that point, that's why. And that's definitely a big pitfall with Showdown, which is probably one of the biggest edges, is if people are just looking at approach, it's not player to player specific. It's just not gonna give you a very good indication of how player A is playing against player B in that scenario. You got to look deeper, and that's what helps. So, all right, let's take a look at the Super Prox, and we can walk through it. So, when this first loads, it's just loaded by salary. So we have Sung J M here at 11,000, Louis Oosthuizen at 10.8, Joakim Niemann 10.6, Daniel Berger, Koepka, etc., all the way down. I'll point out a couple of the key columns. Every week, I like weighted green and regulation. I don't see a way. I mean, obviously, if you're a punt and you're way down in pricing, you've probably got to be a little bit more lenient. I should be a little bit more lenient on weighted green and regulation. But for the most part, in the top half of the pricing, weighted green and regulation is a big deal for me. Even against strokes gain approach, honestly, if you're not you can gain strokes on approach. And if you're still hitting only 12 greens in regulation, that's not good. I don't care if you hit it from 240 to 6 feet on one hole, and then all the rest are to 40 feet or 30 feet. And then you missed a couple of greens. That's where spectrum comes in. But again, not to beat a dead horse, green regulation is a big deal for me, particularly in the top half of the pricing. So we'll look at that, especially this week. I mean, I include weighted driving accuracy and weighted green and regulation. So that'll be important. And then we'll just walk through the bucket. So as you can see, there's a big difference with how some of these guys play this golf course. I mean, Sung J M is pretty spread out. Louis Oosthuizen is pretty condensed here in 150 to 200 yards. So 34% of his shots, 175 to 200, and on down the list. And then over here on the far right, which is what I mentioned in the first 15 minutes that wasn't part of the show. You have two columns, which just summarizes everything. So you don't have to like manually do anything. X projected birdies. And this is essentially for those proximity numbers. This doesn't include par fives just because par five proximity is finicky on, do you count their second shot when they go for it, or do you weigh it against their third shot? Because if I lay up to 100 yards and this guy went for it and had 20 yards, it's not apples to apples. So I just avoided that. And it probably doesn't make a difference this week since it's only two par fives. But again, it's just the par five scoring isn't included in this, basically. So you can sort by projected birdies. You can do largest to smallest. This includes all the proximities with their putting statistics included, which is kind of nice. And then the far right is their weighted proximity, which I like quite a bit. And you'll see guys that pop up here in proximity. Maybe not so much in the putting. You got Lucas Glover here, number 2, and he's not going to putt very well. It's just part of it. But he is 7,400, and he's worth a dart if you're looking that route. So what I would do starting off here, so we can look at the pricing. So make this a first look and talk through some players. Like I said, the first thing I'll always do, generally speaking, is I will filter on weighted green and regulation above average. That just weeds out the negatives, basically. Like I said, you could go down to the bottom and probably need to add in some negatives. Just you just can't be that picky. But I would be really, I would have to have a pretty strong argument against, or I guess for the idea of playing someone losing weighted green and regulation, because again, it's weighted to the field and the event or course, and weighted driving accuracy. So if you're losing in both, that's not a very good sign to play you this week, at least, even if your course history is good. So green and regulation, number one. We can use spectrum off the tee, spectrum approach. I guess we could do spectrum approach and just do like above average. Let's do top 60% for this one. Just make it a little bit wider of a range. So top 60%. Off the tee doesn't really matter. This week, I know, like I just said, you should weigh it, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to weigh it in there. If it's just eyeballing it or using like weighted driving accuracy. Driving accuracy might be the way to go. There's nothing really that stands out for Josh in the chat. I assume he's in the chat. There's your Brian Harmon short game right there. Nice. Killing it. Getting 2 strokes around the green. That's good. Yeah, so I think from there we just go through it player by player. So that weeds out a good number. So right there, by me taking the top 70% or 60% in spectrum approach per round and weighted green and regulation rate, that gives me a pretty tight pool. Is there more trouble off the tee or on approach? That's a question from Josh in the chat. I mean, I would say off the tee, to be honest. There's trouble both, but what I recall, there's more water in play off the tee. Yeah, I think there's more trouble off the tee. Again, I still want to weigh green and regulation, so I don't know what your angle is with that, Josh. Just kidding. It's definitely, there's a lot of trouble off the tee. So like if you were to go back to older events at the Honda, a lot of the double bogey or worse was due to a drive in the water, basically, into a hazard. Very rarely, the greens aren't very easy, I will say. Like they're kind of built up. They're not like classic Donna Ross where they fall off all which way. There's decent protection with bunkers and rough, so it's not like treacherous. But I would definitely say it's like 70-75% more difficult off of the tee getting it in play versus if you're in the fairway trying to hit it on the green. Like that's not going to be a concern. If the wind picks up, sure, it's going to be tough everywhere. But yeah, off the tee is very tricky here. It's very difficult to say. So let me pull up the Data Golf thing real quick. So like I said, so it shows driving accuracy at 65% and green and regulation rate here at 64%. This doesn't really help me with like the penalties. Like this says missed fairway penalty. Doesn't really tell me if someone hit in the water or not. Penalty strokes per round. Every player is averaging 0.7. So like almost someone's going to get a penalty stroke around. Like every player is going to get a penalty stroke around almost. So it's very high. And I would venture to, besides the bear trap holes, that's going to be all tee shots. Yeah, the tee shots are tough. All right, so across the bat, I think it'd probably be best just for us to look across. Again, you have the sample size here. Oosthuizen only has 4 rounds, 69 approaches. Nice. He's really sticking it from 75 to 100 yards with his 2 approaches of an average of 8.8 feet. So again, like sample size is a concern with the 5T, but 10T is available. So it's not a bad way to look at it. The trouble is like with Neiman last week, he really only played the Farmers since the fall swing. So seeing his results at the Farmers outweigh the fall swing numbers was pretty important. And that's why you see his numbers here from spectrum approach, off the tee, around the green. Everything is just sky high. the last 2 weeks or last 2 terms he's played. But yeah, you can see most of the shots are going to come in this 150, 175 to 200. And that's really where I would look for who stands out. Like Keith Mitchell is interesting. 9,100 for Keith Mitchell. His proximity numbers are all really good. So 125 to 150, 20% of his shots from there. He's averaging 26 feet. It's pretty good. 150 to 175, 28 feet. And then 35 feet from 175 to 200. And he's making a birdie. Was that 1 out of 5 times? It's pretty good. Even more from 35 feet, which that might be a little bit hard to maintain. So yeah, that's Keith Mitchell's really interesting. And then what we can do, and I'll just go ahead and do this now. If we go back to fantasygolfbag.com and click extended approach, I'm just curious what proximity numbers overall he's hitting to, if it actually looks better or if it's because of the course specific numbers that we pinned with the Super Prox sheet. All right, so same with the first one. I'm just going to download it. The cool thing with the extended approach is you can model it. So there's rankings. There's a rankings column, so you can actually put in weights for different stats. You can put it in for procs, strokes gained off the tee, approach, putting, whatever you want. And you can actually get a custom ranking here. So I'm not going to tinker with that now, but you can see that if you're watching the video, obviously you can see that on the far right. But for me, I'm just curious with Keith Mitchell. So I'll just use this to eyeball it. So you can see here, he's gaining 0.7 strokes off the tee, give or take. 0.2 on approach. And then across the board, weighted procs, which is what I'm mostly concerned with, is all these middle columns, weighted procs. He's above everybody. That's impressive. Yeah, so yeah, let's go. Let's just hammer the 10s really quick, and I'm going to pull up Data Golf and look at Keith Mitchell. But just so he kind of jumped out at me as we went through the top pricing. So not to overlook Sungjae, Oosthuizen, or Neiman, who are the only ones gaining green regulation. Sungjae's number here on driving accuracy stands out to me quite a bit. So again, this is weighted to the field. So it doesn't matter if these are huge fairways or tight fairways or if it's windy or firm or soft, whatever. Man, and I would be willing to bet we're going to have some values as we go down that we can play. But this might be a week to pay up for Mr. Sungjae. The problem is his procs numbers don't look great. They're really, really pretty bad, to be honest. So what I'm looking at for people listening on the podcast, the Sungjae M's at 11K on DK. His average proximity from 125 to 150, which on this golf course he's hitting about 1 in 4 shots from this range, 29 feet. It's really not that good. And that's recent form, not just course specific on the 29 feet. 150 to 175, 38 feet. And that's with 55 shots. So it's not small sample size. That's surprising, to be honest. Still very consistent. Like, it's not bad, but it's not high as you would want to see it. Yeah, this might just be a 10K plus fade. So let's just move on to the 9Ks for now. So again, for the 10Ks that did show up when I filtered it, for those listening on the audio podcast, Sungjae M at 11K, Louis Oosthuizen at 10.8, and Joaquin Niemann at 10.6. So all three look fine. I don't know if any stand out as like great plays. The one thing that did stand out to me for Sungjae Again, he's gaining on green regulation, which is good on this golf course. He's won here before. That's good. The driving accuracy, though, 11% gain on the field is pretty solid. You don't see that very much. Good Bez down here popping there, Josh. He's chalky. Are you talking about Sungjae? Yeah, I mean, the win equity isn't there for Sungjae in this type of field. It just, he hasn't been playing as sharp as he was last year. Definitely not as consistent. I can pull up his data golf card really quick. Sungjae M. Some really big numbers on approach this season so far. So he had his one lone win back at the Shriners. So far this season, this calendar year, 2022, the guy plays a lot of golf. He's played 5 tournaments already. Gained strokes in 4 of the 5 total. Missed cut at the Sony. T11, T6 of the Farmers, T33 at the Genesis. So in cash, he's probably one of the safest ones up there. And with having a win at the Honda and a TA last year, it's probably pretty safe. But yeah, like to Crack's point, he's very expensive. And we talked about this last week. This isn't the same type of field with it being stacked. So I think there is a little bit more incentive to pay up for a Sungjae M type. There's just not a lot of, seriously, I just talked about Keith Mitchell for 2 or 3 minutes there, and he's 9,100. So there's really just not a lot of balanced builds that are very appetizing. So in this situation, you kind of want to pay up for somebody and then build bounce a little bit in the 8s and then just try to get one punt that works out in the 6s. But like last week, I don't know what won the Millie. I can't remember what the lineup was, or not the Millie, the whatever their big $20 was. It was not Rom who was highest price, and we talked about that on the Wednesday night stream. So we were spot on there, Crack. Yeah, exactly. It's very field relevant, Crack. So yes, it's very expensive. At a certain point, it's just such a small margin for like what's the right price for Sungjae. Is he 11K? Is it too high? Is 10K plenty of value? And again, $1,000 can go a long way. But I do think you're not getting much more consistency by saving a couple thousand and then gaining it on the bottom end either. But we'll look at the values here in just a second. I don't think you can build a cash line starting with Sunday. We're definitely going to try on Wednesday night, Josh. Thanks for the comment. So we talked about Keith Mitchell. Just the guys that pop right off the bat. That's not a bad way to look at guys. Mito's going to be pretty popular this week. Cameron Young is probably like the worst course fit on this golf course, right? He doesn't have to hit driver. Let's look at his proximities. So if you don't see a box here, it's basically using the field average from the last 2 years. It's just not player specific. It's just field average. So it's not as accurate, but it's close enough. Yeah, not great. Nothing pops. For example, if you go down here to like Svensson and the guys in the 7Ks, like there's guys in this mid buckets, Hudson Swaff or Dylan Fratelli. I think we're going to be okay finding some values. It doesn't look good on paper. Obviously, no one wants to click Dylan Fratelli at 7,100. I'm not even sure if he's made a cut this year. But we deal with what we have to deal with. Christian Bez, look at those procs, Josh. Long iron's not so much, but pretty good. And making some putts too. So I joked about Russell Knox. So I'm kind of all over the place, but we'll look at Keith Mitchell. So in the 10K range, I do think it's worth spending up for somebody. I do think in cash too, because I really don't think you're going to have just like the crazy good balanced builds you saw last week. And maybe you can make it look look okay, but I still think there's enough made cut equity for these 10K guys. Sanjay's been pretty consistent. I mean, I would try to start with Sanjay, but we'll see. To Josh's point, it might just be too expensive. 9,100. Let's go take a look at Keith Mitchell. Talked about him last week on hole 4. I think 4 was the par 3 at the Genesis. I think it was 241. He hit it to 6 feet. He gained 1.2 shots on the field on that one shot, something like that. Pretty crazy. Yeah, his last couple starts, man. I'm not a big Keith Mitchell guy. And to be fair, I kind of confuse Keith Mitchell with Pat Kazire from time to time. I don't know why. I don't know if it's a Sea Island thing, but looking at Keith Mitchell's recent results, T10, T12, MC at the Farmers, which a completely different golf course, so I kind of throw that out in my head anyways. Sony Open T7, that's a little bit closer, to be honest. Sony Open doesn't have as much trouble off the tee, so if we look at the driving accuracy, 66%, so it's not much trouble as far as water. But a similar golf course, Yardage, green regulation rate's higher, so it's actually a very similar. Look at the Prox numbers: 150 to 200 yards, 46%, spot on to the Honda. So that's not to say this is going to be like a course comp. I'm definitely not saying that, but there's a lot of similarities when you cross off the Bermuda. The distance of the golf course, it's 40 or 20 yards longer than this golf course. Let's see. I think the fairway width's a little bit wider, but driving accuracy, 66%, green regulation rate, 75%. So the only difference. Interesting. Yep. Crack says, Killa Keith, always live. Yeah, I'm on the Keith train, I think, this week. He's an interesting guy for course history. I mean, this is where I talk about looking at upside, because in reality, this win looks kind of fluky. And only time will tell. He's got a miscut, a win, a miscut, T53. The golf course is tough, though. This golf course doesn't really scream course history to me. The weather is a big factor. It doesn't take much for you to throw a double or triple out there. I mean, just one bad tee shot and you're staring at double bogey, if not worse. It just doesn't take very much for you to miss the cut. Like the minus 2.32, minus 1.44 for him in 2020 and 2018 on approach, I'd be willing to bet he hit at least 1 or 2 balls in the water in one single round in 2020, probably in the bear trap, and then probably at least 1 ball in the water in 2018. So it's just, I would almost say the course history is fluky in that sense of bad. I like the Bermuda angle, the Y-lie angle. His recent form is great. Like I said, T12, T7, miscut, T12, T10. So a lot of top 15s. So Killa Keith at 9,100, I like quite a bit. And we can check his, like I said, in the extended approach, you can pull him up and you can see he's pretty much green and weighted proximity in all those different stats, which is nice. It's interesting here, Crack. So like when I first filtered on green regulation, was it green regulation or approach? So I'm using spectrum approach on the other sheet versus stroke gain approach on this sheet. Daniel Berger at 10.4 stands out quite a bit in the extended approach numbers. I mean, so I'm going to go unfilter this one and see what made him. Yeah, there you go. So the spectrum approach numbers actually has him losing strokes, which isn't a big deal. I'm not that concerned about it. Yeah, I think Daniel Berger's probably an interesting one for this week. I figured out why. I was in the 5T, he is a little bit negative. That's why. 10T, he's positive. So that's the reason why there. Apples to apples, we got to look at it comparison. All right, so back to Super Prox. So we hit the 9Ks. Pretty much Keith Mitchell stands out the most. I'm not going to go back to defending champ Matt Jones. I think he made the cut last week, but nothing stands out. If you look through his numbers, nothing really jumps out as somebody that I want to play. Hasn't been making any putts. Proximity numbers overall from these distances, like 175 to 200, he's averaging 45 feet. And that's with 40 approaches. So, I mean, that's, again, not a small sample size. That's 40 shots. Yeah, Keith Mitchell stands out to me. So we'll just hang it there with Keith Mitchell. Alex Noren's probably fine. His proximity numbers look pretty good overall. So Keith Mitchell, Alex Noren, the cheap nines. Who was he talking about? Yeah, so Crack made a good point. So like Berger, we don't know the news on Berger's back, but he's been having an issue with his back since AT&T. So I think the deal was because he played the just trying to recount in my memory. He played the waste management, and he missed the cut. Correct? Yeah. So I think the deal was he played the Farmers T20. He was going to be super popular. I was going to play him at the AT&T, and everyone apparently saw him on the telecast grabbing his back, or he looked like he was in pain at the Farmers. I didn't notice that. That's on me. I was going to play him, and he withdrew on Wednesday. Goes to the waste management the next week and says, hey, I'm going to test it out, and hopefully I'm able to play the Honda. He misses the cut, so at least he plays, and then he's been resting for the last 14 days or so. So hopefully he's okay. I'll definitely be playing some Berger and GPPs. There's no doubt about that. But in any kind of high dollar single entry, I don't see. I just feel like it's such a big risk. I mean, unless you're wakey and you can max the 555, and still eat really nice steaks and wine the next night, you should probably avoid Berger in those type of contests just because the risk is high. Not just of a WD. I'm not saying he's going to WD, but just of him being a little bit hesitant with his back. This isn't a very good golf course to be kind of binking it around. You kind of got to be fully committed out there. Yeah, he might be gimpy. Gimpy Berger. 8K range. Let's see if anybody stands out. Mito has been getting a lot of talk, and I'm a big Mito guy. I mean, I think anyone that wins 3 times on the Korn Ferry Tour, even if it was 20 months or 18 months, whatever it wasn't just a single season, has my attention. He hasn't been great this year. So like for me, if I'm going through this sheet, Patrick Reed's already out in my mind. Patrick Reed has been just fucking trash. So bad. I'll probably play him at the Masters. I'll just maybe he gets priced down to 6,900 at the Masters and we'll play him. But he's been so bad. 1.5 shot spectrum approach negative. That's not good. -6% weighted green regulation. That's not good. -2.7 weighted driving accuracy. That's not good. Proximity numbers are bad. If we pull up just the regular stuff for Patrick Reed, you can just see one big red line. This is awful. I don't think there's 6K guys this bad. Shit, like Andrew Novak, 6,200. So you can either play Patrick Reed at 8,800 or whatever he's at, or Andrew Novak at 6,200. You're getting the same golfer. Hot take. But Mito has been playing better. So I think in the top range of the 8Ks, Mito's probably the guy I'll go to. maybe a little bit of Brian Harmon. I don't see myself going back to Cameron Young this week. If I enter more lineups than $20 and I see that he's going to be low owned, I don't even know what his ownership's going to be. I meant to pull it up. Oh well, I'm not going to go run it now. Yeah, Vegas wise, so quite a few guys like Jonathan Vegas. Jonathan Vegas is interesting. I'm curious what his course history is. He can go low, and this isn't necessarily a golf course where you can go low, but like the green regulation rate's really high. Same with Russell Knox. Like when you start comparing it in a certain weighted aspect, it starts to stand out a bit more. So 125 to 150, Jonathan Vegas is very good with his wedges, averaging 21 feet. And that's with 27 shots. It's pretty good. 30 feet from 150 to 175, still good. I mean, he's about in line with everybody else in this range. So not bad. Bad would be Patrick Reed, 35 feet. So he's pretty good there. Not as sharp from 175 to 200. Not end of the world. And putter just has not been good. Overall proximities are good. Whoever thought about playing Jonathan Vegas in single entry at 8K? Yeah, American Express, he had some issues. But since then, he's been better. So he did go overseas at the Saudi International and finished 8th. Farmers T39, again, not the same golf course. Genesis T55. And that's kind of where the irons come into play. So off the tee and approach, he's gaining strokes, and the putter is just not cooking. Honda, decent course history the last 4 years, T30, T27, T16, T72. It's like not enough for course history for me to be excited about. It's just enough for me to feel like, did he squeak through the cut and just like play decent on the weekend to finish T30? Or because he's not doing anything special around the green, approach is all pretty much flat. Very interesting. All right. Let's see. Aaron Wise at 8,400. Nothing stands out. Yeah, nothing stands out. I think Russell Knox and Bezadenhout are probably the last two guys we'll talk about here in the 8K range. Russell Knox is at 81. Christian Bezadenhout at 8,000. I find it very interesting on Bezadenhout's driving accuracy because he's not known for off the tee. So if I go pull up his card on Data Golf, actually not bad. I don't know why we thought his off the tee wasn't very good. So he lost strokes off the tee last week, but I'm not worried about that. He still missed the cut, so he just hit some bad drives. I'm sure he hit a couple in the trees or something and couldn't advance it or something. But overall, he hasn't played the Honda. Yeah, here's his accuracy numbers. So driving distance. So Bezadenhout's not very long. So it's a cool little stat that they have on Data Golf. You can see. So traditional stats still have a place. They have distance and they have accuracy. I believe this is weighted, if I'm not mistaken. I have to click a button. I'm not doing that. So like every tournament, he's losing about 10 yards, I guess, against the field average, which is a lot. I mean, what's the field average? Like 290 nowadays. So he's hitting at 280. But accuracy is very, very straight. That's a pretty good thing to have around PGA National. For example, and again, you can see that in the Super Prox sheet. I'm sorry, I keep minimizing this. he's gaining 12% on the field in accuracy. Same with Russell Knox, green regulation. I mean, it just looks too good not to pass it up. But for Bezuidenhout, Sony Open, he finished T17. So we're already kind of throwing out the Sony Open comp, possibly. We'll just throwing it out there. Distance-wise, Bermuda greens, similar driving accuracy number. Not as big a penalty, but the accuracy is up there. 12% gain on the field, 20% gain at the Farmers, which is a long golf course, and that's nice of him just to make the cut. And that's probably where you see this number for his approach be really high. Because like we talked about at the beginning of the show, if he's got 200 yards into these par fours versus DJ having 150, he's going to hit. He's going to have more opportunities to gain strokes by hitting an average shot, in my opinion, average shot like 40 feet. He's going to gain strokes hitting it to 40 feet from 200 yards, which is still a pretty good shot. But I feel like you're kind of rewarding someone that's really not, competing against the top guys just because they're beating a baseline. It's still accurate accounting work, but in my opinion, for DFS, it's very misleading. Like if DJ gained 1.22 and Bezuidenhout gained 1.22, it's not the same. It's just not the same thing. But back to the accuracy, 20%, 11%. So yeah, I think Bezuidenhout's interesting for just going down the board. I mean, this what we're looking at. If you're listening to the audio version on the Data Golf, on the far right side, you'll see an accuracy column, and he's gaining 10% across the board on almost every event in accuracy, which is going to be very important this week for obvious reasons. So distance doesn't matter so much. Give me some Bezuidenhout. And then Russell Knox. We talked about him. I tweeted about him as a joke, but he really hasn't paid off on this golf course the last five years. But he does have two top threes. I think it was two top threes. 2014, he finished second. 2015, he finished third. Since then, it's a terrible finish to rattle this off. But T26, miscut. T51, miscut, and then miscut last year. He plays out of Jacksonville, so it's surprising that his putting is not great on Bermuda. He's just a bad putter. So this is the pandemic. This is the predicament. Fucking pandemic. Even if let's just say we map him out, he's going to gain strokes on approach. That's fantastic. And, if he gains a little bit off the tee, that's even better. Even if he puts average, I mean, you're looking at like a T20 for him, I'm talking about. I mean, he's so bad. I don't watch enough of his own tourcast to see his putting, but apparently this guy's struggling. So I'm curious, like if we go to the Super Prox sheet, if we pull up Russell Knox, again, everything across the board looks good. He's gaining off the tee and spectrum. Approach is good. He is losing a shot, almost a full shot putting, which is very reflective of what we just looked at. And again, if we go all the way to the right, I bet his proximity numbers look pretty good. His putting's not bad, actually. So from this range, 175 to 200, he's going to get 4 of those. And he's going to make just less than 1 around. So not bad. Not as bad as I was thinking it would be. There's another one, 25 feet. Okay. Sorry, kind of talking out loud on Knox because it's interesting for his stats. If you're just looking at his stats, I don't think you could point to a bad number besides putting. Anything besides putting, I don't think you can show me something that's scary. If I go to his normal sheet and go across the board for Russell Knox, again, you see the same numbers off the tee approach. He's weighted proximity buckets. He's gaining 3%, 4%, 6%. So very good. 56% positive approach is just very consistent, and the putting is just atrocious. So I'm curious. Look at Rye's distance and accuracy. We will do that. How cheap is Rye this week? 7,400, not as cheap as I thought he would be. Yep. So overall, I mean, we'll get down to the 7Ks. Let's just hop there really quick. For the 8Ks, to recap, and again, I know I jumped from like the 10s to the 8s pretty quickly off Keith Mitchell, but I think Bezuidenhout and Knox are both in play. I really do like Bezuidenhout. I think the skill level that he possesses for this golf course is really good. If the driving accuracy is any indication, and maybe I build a couple lineups where I really just focus on above average driving accuracy with above average green regulation rate. Because for example, I mean, if the guys are going to play each round, and let's just say they hit 15 greens, it's not a lot of room for trouble in the other 3 holes, assuming they don't make double or something like that, maybe birdie the par 5s. Excuse me. So with that example, if you just filter on weighted driving accuracy and green regulation, excuse me, it'll give you a nice little concise list. Billy Horschel is there for some ridiculous reason. All right, back to it. Crack will use Bez. That's good news. I will use Bez as well. I'm sold. The first look has a little bit of benefit now. Just looking at the driving accuracy, if I can trust that he's going to drive it that accurate, that's literally half the battle. 66% driving, 64% driving accuracy, literally 64% of the battle right there. Get it in play. And if he's going to hit, let's just say I have him at 12% gain on the field. So what's that? 75%. Let's just say he hits 75% of the fairways. That's pretty good. I'll take my chances with him hitting greens from the fairway. And what's the average distance here? I don't think the percentages show. 150, 28 feet. 175 to 200 is a little bit of a concern there. I'm not going to lie. But if he can stay in this 20% range for both 125 to 150 and 150 to 175, that's pretty good. All right, enough Bez talk. Let's hit the and then Mito. We talked about 8,900 Mito. That's good. 7K range. Let's hit Aaron Rye. So like right off the bat, the first thing I eyeballed just now that we've talked through a couple guys with driving accuracy numbers, 7.5% gain on the field driving accuracy, 2.3% weighted green and regulation rate. So let's go pull his card up, Data Golf, and to Crack's credit, I'm assuming we'll see a little bit of the same. So first thing I'll look at, I'm already eyeballing the blue over here, so Crack is spot on with the accuracy. He's actually longer than Bez, so in a certain sense, he's a better player than Bez, just off of the distance and accuracy off the tee. Just curious on like the recent form. He's very sporadic, I will say. So he's played all the events on the PGA Tour this whole year, it looks like. I mean, he's played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. He's played 12 events this season. I mean, why not? You're playing for $1.6 million every week. Genesis, he did make the cut. He finished T61. MDF at Pebble Beach, so technically that's a made cut. He lost strokes on approach. T6 at the Farmers. That's pretty good there, I will say. T6 at the Farmers is solid. I don't know what he did there. He gained 15 yards on the distance. But yeah, so to Crack's point, accuracy is important. The RSM may be a good comp. Let's take a look at that. So we only have one golf course, 6,800 yards. It's a little bit higher driving accuracy, higher green regulation rate, much shorter approach distances. So I take that back. The RSM is not a good comp. I was thinking it from like the accuracy, because it's a pretty thought it was a pretty accurate golf course or tight golf course. I don't know what this is. Dot show PGA Tour average. So yeah, I don't know how I'm supposed to read that. If that's accuracy is lower than PGA Tour average or higher. Yeah, it says higher. There you go. Yep. So I take that back. RSM's not a good comp. But yeah, from the accuracy standpoint, that's pretty much spot on. The other guys, just to fill you in on guys in this range that check the box. So let's just look at top 20% driving accuracy, and let's just look at 7K guys. So Denny McCarthy, surprisingly enough. KH Lee, not too surprising, actually. He's a pretty good ball striker. Brendan Todd, not surprising. Aaron Rye, Alex Smalley, Adam Svensson, and Kevin Streelman down here at 7K. Streelman's had a rough go this beginning of this year, though. Gaining on the field and driving accuracy, but losing on the green regulation rate. I think Svensson's interesting. Let's take a look at Svensson's numbers. We know he's very accurate. Yeah, I mean, those numbers already look better. So, like, for example, if we just use the data golf average, 150 to 200 yards, between those two, he's 23 feet from 150 to 175 with 45 approaches. So, I mean, that's a healthy sample. 36 feet from 175 to 200. Still pretty good, up to 200 yards. It's a 25-yard bucket. So, truthfully, it's a large range. It could be that he had a lot of those 185 to 200 or 190 to 200, and it doesn't reflect that early 175 to 185 number. But I'm curious what Svensson looks like here. So on the regular extended approach sheet, I'm really just looking at the weighted prox buckets. So this takes less into account of the approach numbers in, which this is where I think Super Prox is helpful. But this gives you an idea. He hits a lot of shots inside of 24 feet. Positive approaches, 55% positive approaches. So no concern with Svensson. That's actually a really big number. So we have a number here, over 0.25 gained on approach per shot. He hits 26% of his shots, iron shots, gain over a quarter of a shot. That's really high. All right, Svensson, let's take a peek. Longer doesn't hurt. Crack made a comment about Aaron Rye's distance. I think he was referring to over Bez's distance. But yeah, longer doesn't hurt. So Svensson has been struggling. Same deal. You're going to have issues around the green of putting. So that's not a good sign. But the accuracy is good. I still would take some shots on Svensson. T7 at the Sony Open. I mean, I don't know. Let's look at the leaderboard from the Sony Open. We might have to just pull a Sony Open course comp and look at it. I mean, guys that have won here before. Russell Henley won the Honda Classic. Kisner usually plays well on Bermuda. Russell Knox shows his face here at Sony. Keith Mitchell shows his face. Svensson shows his face. Connors. Palmer is not a course comp. That's unfortunate. Kadira makes sense. Bezadenhout, T17. EVR, I'd play EVR here, which is surprising. Davis Riley. Davis Riley's on our list. So let's take a look at Davis Riley. Davis Riley. He does not crack the board for weighted driving accuracy, I don't think. Where did you go? So Davis Riley's right at 7K. If we go across the board, he actually is gaining off on driving accuracy. Yeah. Spectrum approach, he's losing 0.03. So he's basically net to the field at even. his approach numbers are good. I mean, 30 feet on average. Davis Riley is definitely in play. Let's take a peek at him really quick. And apologies for the sniffles. I don't think I'm sick with anything serious. I think it's just allergies. There's a scale of allergies, by the way. It's like up to 12, which was news to me as of yesterday. And apparently Florida is facing number 12 on the scale. So, yeah. So, I mean, this is more, I don't want to say a gut play, because I do think the data reflects it. Because I am including this data from the Farmers where he lost 2.5 strokes on approach. Again, I don't have the Farmers Spectrum data just pulled up by hand, but I'd be willing to bet there's some numbers there where the 2.4 is not reflective of how he actually played. He obviously played bad because he played bad on like every asset for that event. But overall, I mean, I don't think there's a problem looking at just accuracy. And then the green regulation rate's actually pretty high. So, yeah, that's a little bit conflicting, to be honest. He hasn't played since Pebble. Yeah, so he hasn't played since Pebble. So if we go pull his 10T, which is his last 10 tournaments for Davis Riley at 7K. Still the same because that's really all he's played because he hasn't played anything since Pebble. The numbers look good. Yeah, I think you got to play some Davis Riley. There's a couple other guys in there that kind of pop. Sabatini, Sink shows his face. Dylan Fratelli, Hudson Swafford. How did Hudson Swafford play last week? Again, now I'm jumping around a bit. My head's not fully clear, so I apologize. We're still in the low sevens. We're just kind of eyeballing guys on the sheet and then bouncing to Data Golf to pull it up. Honda comp. Are you saying Honda comp is a comp for Sony or vice versa? I wonder if you could comp it one way and not the other. It doesn't seem right? Shouldn't be. All right, so we're looking at Hudson Swafford. So Hudson Swafford did not play last week. His last 2 finishes, the Amex he won, Farmers Insurance miscut, Waste Management T60, but he gained strokes on approach. His driving accuracy, his distance is high, which I guess isn't a bad thing, but I kind of want to see more accuracy. But been very good. His history at the Honda is a mixed bag, similar to most everybody else that's played here. Miscut last year, T21 in 2020, MDF in 2019, T64 in 2018. So Hudson's interesting. These are definitely guys. The guys that I'm mentioning are definitely going to make my player pool. I'll have exposure. The discussion around like cash, obviously I'll write it up in my article and guys that I really just lean on. But these are certainly guys in play. Fratelli, another guy, his course history is sporadic. 2 miscuts, an 11th and a T58 his last 4 years here. His last couple starts, his accuracy sucks. So that might be enough for me to just not play Dylan Fratelli. I actually watched him. What was that? The Farmers? I think it was the Farmers. Man, he had the duck hooks. He was hooking it left like hard. Because he had, you can see his off the tee numbers. So I think when I ran it, his off the tee numbers were even worse based on Spectrum, which is hard to do. Like Spectrum, from a strokes game perspective, Spectrum data will clean up a lot of the fluky shots. So it'll be a little bit better or a little bit worse. It's very rare that it's way worse. And it was. And I went back and looked at him, and he duck hooked one out of bounds, re-teed, duck hooked it again in the hazard, dropped. So he's basically line 4 from the same tee shot. So it's, again, you're really losing a lot of strokes off the tee. Oh, God. Yeah. I mean, even at the Honda, he's losing to the field. Now that they have this, I'm curious. So if I go back to Knox, so like we just talked about Knox before I pull this up. We just talked about Knox's. I'll make myself bigger for this one. So we just talked about Knox having some mixed bag of course history. So back in 2014 and 2015, he had 2 top threes, and then of the last 6 years, I think he had like 4 or 5 missed cuts. Right. So it's very, from a course history standpoint, there's nothing you can rely on. You can't really count on, it's just the missed cuts that matter. And you can't count on the top threes. Otherwise, the last 6 years, you would have lost a lot of money thinking Russell Knox is going to just hammer out top threes every year. So I'm going to pull up Russell Knox. And I'm curious, before we scroll down, I'm curious if the years that he finished in the top 3, if his driving accuracy was notably better than the last 5 or 6 years. I don't know, but I'm curious if that's happened. A little bit better. So, yeah, I mean, it's not notable, but it's definitely high. So in 2014, he gained 13% on the field. Outside of last year, he did gain 10% on the field, still missed the cut. His highest was like 4% gain on the field, so it was worse. No idea what his game was at the time, but 2019, pretty much the same. He's just hit or miss, and I think the putter is really his problem. So I think you play Russell Knox, and you hope that the putter isn't complete garbage. Squeaks through the cut. He may be chalking, and maybe it's worth taking the putt angle. Because, like, honestly, the putting is not an inconsistency. Like, people talk about volatility in putting, and I mean, you can even see it. You can literally see it in his results this year. He's consistently bad. That's not volatility. He's just a bad putter. And there's some guys, like you probably pull up Spieth, and he's a good putter every time. There's no volatility. The volatility is, are they going to gain 1 stroke or 1.5 strokes volatility? Spieth. Pull up Spieth. First Look is great. We get into all these different tangents and talk about, actual strategy. This year he's actually been all over the place, surprisingly enough. So this is a Spieth player card. Around the green, everyone hates around the green. Shout out Nelson because he really loves Spieth and Jason on the Spieth around the green chip-ins. But that's just his game. Like, it's not fluky in this sense, and it's not volatile in this sense. Putting, he certainly can make his share of 45 or 50 footers on occasion in certain tournaments. But this is not volatility. This is just his game. It's a skill. It's literally a skill. So take what it is. Spieth was a turtle weekend at the Genesis. Yeah, I watched. Look at that distance. All right, so 6K range. So the 7K is pretty spread out. We didn't really hammer anybody specifically. The bottom range I do like. So we talked about Smalley. We didn't pull up Sink, but Sink's worth looking into. Davis Riley is kind of like a shot in the dark in a way. He hasn't played since Pebble, but the way his game sets up for this golf course, it looks like it should agree. Svensson makes sense. Aaron Rye makes sense. Fratelli, I'm undecided. I'll probably punt them on like FanDuel. I'll see what the pricing is on FanDuel versus DK for Fratelli. My gut says you don't play Fratelli because he's going to snap hook a couple in the water left. Hudson Swafford's fine. Nick Taylor's actually doesn't check out as well as I was hoping. His course history is really good. Like, he's near the top. When you look at Nick Taylor, where'd he go? 7,200. So you can look across the board. I mean, 4 strokes around ball striking at this golf course. Miscut. Probably no Nick Taylor. No Nick Taylor. Aaron Rye. Sepp Straka. don't think it stands out. Yeah, no Straka. Grayson Sig, I think, is a good play. Like Grayson Sig at 7,400. Lucas Glover, probably take a shot. Michael Thompson's getting a little bit of talk about. I haven't dove into him too much. I just don't want to spend too much time in the 7K range because there's a lot of, if you download the sheet, you can sift through everybody in here. I really do think in the 7K range, green regulation is very important. And I would lean towards the high side on driving accuracy. It's always a complete package. Like I make a joke about using, strokes gain approach as everyone's going to use strokes gain approach in their model, and everyone's going to end up with the same guys. Obviously, you got to use a complete package in some sense. But for me in this golf course, it seems pretty straightforward, where accuracy is paramount. And accuracy to me is two components: driving accuracy and green regulation, which is an accuracy with the irons. So those are the two main pieces. Like I said at the top of the show, I don't think you would have to have a very strong argument for me to play someone that's losing, certainly in both categories, but probably specifically in green regulation. I don't see any way I can play someone losing to the field in green regulation going to this golf course. It just doesn't make sense to me. I hope someone wins. That's really sucking, like Kevin Streelman. 6K range. Let's just filter out, like I just said, green regulation, above average, driving accuracy, above average. And let's just see who stands out. And then we'll look at above average for Prox. I should say below average. Let's see. Ryan Armour stands out quite a bit. That's interesting. Sample size is a little bit small, so take that with a grain of salt. Satoshi Kodaira, that makes sense. And he actually played well at the Sony. Von Taylor makes a lot of sense. He actually showed up, very high. So let's go take a look at Von Taylor really quick. Let's try to cap the show at an hour 20. I have to take my Metamucil and all my other medicines. Von Taylor. So he's played a lot at the Honda. You think he would be a pretty good fit? PGA National. Did they change the golf course? I feel like they changed it back in like 2010. PGA National. Okay. No, I guess not. I'm picturing some holes. I thought maybe just thinking of Doral in Miami or something. Yeah, because I guess Henley won here. So he doesn't have any good course history. Some made cuts, but they're all like T42, T59, a couple T25s, T20-ish finishes. Nothing good. So yeah, course history I wouldn't rely on. I think Von Taylor's okay. He would be like literally it would be a GPP dart. Because he's honestly not that cheap for what form he's bringing here. Losing strokes putting, hasn't had any good finishes. So yeah, Von Taylor, I think it's worth a shot. Again, it's a weak field, so it's not the same as like using him last week in a stronger field with he's being like a French play. But yeah, I think he's worth consideration. Tringali, has he straightened out his drive? Tringali withdrew this week, right? Or are you just asking in general? And I don't think he had a problem with his drive. Remember he got hurt, Tringali? Pretty sure he was hurt. But besides the point, I thought he withdrew. But yeah, he was hurt and played him last week, and it worked out really well. So we'll keep going back to Tringali. Tringali 7,300 last week was just ridiculous. He had win equity. Seriously, he had win equity in that tournament. Hayden Buckley at 6,600 looks okay from a proximity standpoint. Putting, not so much. Again, you're going to have to make some decisions on this range. Ben Coles has been popping quite a bit. Not a lot of sample. Let's go take a peek. He is gaining on both green regulation and accuracy. I think I played him in Showdown at Pebble. I think it was Pebble. Yeah, all over the place. He did finish T41 here in 2013. Not sure how he got into the event. So let's just see if anyone else stands out that's real strong. I'm going to use the other sheet really quick. Austin Smotherman has some pretty good proc stats. Yeah, his approach numbers look really good. So Smotherman 6,800. Kadira is way up there. So Kadira is definitely in play. Ryan Armour is really green. So I'm going to take a peek at him before we get off the show. Alpha Barn Rat's checking out. Why is Alpha Barn Rat? I have one round. I have one round on Alpha Barn Rat. He missed the cut at like the Amex. He gained strokes that day. Pebble. Yep. So he missed the cut at the Pebble and gained strokes. I'll probably play some Yardage. Why not? And then the last guy I'll talk about. I do think Satoshi, I kind of just mentioned in passing because Satoshi's a really good play. If we're talking about course comps, and let's just say Sony is a decent one. And I think, honestly, they have a course fit tool. So like for PGA National, let's see if Wiley's up here somewhere. Probably not. We're just making it up, but data says no. I don't see it. Let's check it this way. Oh, it's players. It doesn't look far off. So that's the green. And then PGA National. So driving distance is higher and approach is higher. Huh. It's pretty similar, just a little bit more on the distance aspect, I guess. Ryan Armour. Ryan Armour's last guy I'll talk about. Like I said, Satoshi, I think, is a good play. Ryan Armour. Yeah, last couple starts. So he hasn't played since Pebble. T20 at the Sony. So, again, that's a good sign. Accuracy off the tee is spot on. I mean, he's gained 10% plus on the field, which is great. At distance is not the highest, which is fine. This isn't, if we want to talk about course fit, that's kind of what you want to fit it to. And then Pebble, he finished T28, gained a little bit off the tee and a little bit putting, or a little bit on approach. And he did gain strokes putting. So very poor results, I would say, from a course history standpoint. Some good stats at the event, but he has, since 2015, 4 missed cuts, a T12 and a T58. So again, I don't think there's a lot of course history to hold. So I would, as I mentioned course history, just kind of know that I'm just saying that more for information purposes. I don't think there's a lot to be held for viewing someone's course history here and knowing if they're going to be a good player or not. I think obviously the recent form is important, but some of it's just the golf course and seeing if they can get through certain stretches of holes without a mistake, unfortunately. The cut shouldn't be low, obviously, but they can avoid some big numbers. Avoiding double bogeys will be big. And I hate when people talk about like, oh, just look at bogey avoidance. Bogey avoidance doesn't matter if they play the Waste Management Phoenix Open and then you come to Honda. Bogey avoidance makes no difference. So double bogey or worse, maybe. I could see like if people really avoid double bogeys everywhere, like for the last 2 years, okay. But yeah, as soon as someone says bogey avoidance, that doesn't mean anything at all. The only thing it means is for that event, they avoided bogeys for that event. It has no meaning to future events. 0. Okay. Final rant. That was it. Pretty good event. Overall, we'll be back. I think all the data is up. The projections and ownership will be up tomorrow morning. And then our live stream will be back Wednesday. We'll talk about the weather. And then my core article should be out tomorrow night or Wednesday morning. I do a course preview on Tuesday, and then we'll finish up with the plays on Wednesday right around lunchtime. That's usually where I hammer out my player pool core, more or less. So appreciate everybody tuning in to the Fantasy Golf Bag First Look. I'm sorry we went a little bit long. This was a bit complex in terms of like trying to decipher the field between like some of the odds on the top price guys and those cheap guys, because there's not enough course history for you to feel great about. And maybe that's an edge in a certain sense, because maybe DK prices in course history more. If you look back at like a Sung JM, a Keith Mitchell at 9,100, again, I think Keith Mitchell's a good play, but if any of those guys that have won are priced up, that might be an opportunity for you to fade. So we'll see. I'll probably write about that in the article. I'll look into guys that have won here in the past and what their next best finish is, because I doubt it's very, very, very consistent over the next like 5 years, just because the golf course is volatile. But again, appreciate you guys tuning in. Sorry this ran 120. Wow. Yeah, thanks, Crack. So we'll talk to you guys tomorrow, and thank you for tuning in. As always, like, rate, whatever the podcast thing says to do, and we'll catch you on Wednesday night for the live stream. Best of luck this week in all your contests. Reach out to me on Twitter at Redkacheek if you have any questions, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.